Welcome into the OBR streaming network. This is a brand new edition of The React. My name is Brad Ward. The man next to me is the always fantastic Pete Smith. Follow him on Twitter at _Pete Smith _. Good to see you all in the chat. Much to talk about tonight here on The React. And make sure you hit like and subscribe. Good to see you all here. What's going on, Pete?
Busy week, I guess. There's a lot going on. Everybody's freaking out. I'm sort of like unmoved. I think it's largely not a big making a mountain out of a molehill, much like the Browns make 20 points into a mountain. I think a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about isn't nearly as big of a deal as most people think it is, but we'll see.
We will see. I mean, there's lots going on. The beginning of the week started with, the scolding of Browns fans, which we're going to hit on. And then, of course, the news of Jameis becoming the starter, Stefanski giving up play calling. We're going to talk about it all. And, the future, I've heard a lot of this too, Pete, driving around on the radio, blow it up, blow it all up, blow it up, cut everybody, start from scratch. And we'll be good in the year 2031. And I am shocked by people's take on this, as I feel like they can pivot and be competitive as early as like next season if they do it correctly.
Right. But I agree.
Yeah.
The thing that we're so caught up in all the stuff that's not going well, particularly offensively, there's some really good stuff going on the defensive side of the ball with young players. That's like genuinely exciting. And it's small samples at this point, but there's a number of players on that side of the ball where you're like genuinely excited, combined with what they're doing on the defensive side of the ball from a scheme standpoint. The last 2 weeks have been really fun from a what they had been, which is just this endless cover one, super pressure all the time, mixing in some cover three and that inverted two crap that I hate on long down and distance. And now all of a sudden, 2 weeks back to back, unrecognizable game plans relative to what Jim Schwartz has done here. And not only that, but the Browns have been pretty good at it. And you're seeing young players step up in a way that's like really exciting. So when we talk about the stuff that has to get fixed, most of which we already knew had to be fixed before the season ever started, it allows you to put a lot more emphasis on that, which is fine.
Yeah, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Real quickly today, some quick injury news, Pete. Jed Wills, DMP, Ethan Poach, DMP, Jordan Hicks, DMP, Jerome Ford, DMP, Ronnie Hickman, DMP ankle, Quentin Jefferson, DMP personal, but you get Wyatt Teller back in this 21-day window. Bailey Zappi is in as the third quarterback or second now, maybe. I don't know. It seems like DTR was a full participant today, so
well, he could have been limited. We've seen the full injury report, whether he's full or limited.
Full.
Then good. I mean, pain tolerance thing. Obviously, the finger being healthy or healthy enough is important. And then the Wyatt Teller thing, I'm just very curious to see how it works. Kevin Stefanski is hopeful he can play this week. I would sort of take it along the lines, not quite to the Jack Conklin extent where they were so conservative, but I would say get him healthier, even if that means holding him an extra week so they can really get going with him. Because at that point, suddenly the offensive line has some things you're like, okay, like that's interesting. Obviously, there are still some major issues there, but if they can get these guys on the field and keep them on the field, along with some of the other things like Jameis Winston and Cedric Tillman, some of these other things that might be work. Nick Chubb, obviously, David Njoku. Okay, now we can start to actually see hopefully some progress on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to hit all those topics. Nahem Hines, 21-day window, never gets activated, not going to play this year. Thoughts?
Disappointing, I suppose. I think ultimately, we'll wait to see what the truth behind it is. But my suspicion is they're basically like, let's wait till next year. And obviously he's only signed to this year, but if he can get healthy and they can bring him back next year in a capacity that makes sense, then fine. I mean, we aren't losing anything by him not playing at this point. So to his credit, much as I've criticized Pierre Strong, he's been better this year. He's certainly still not good, but there are things you're sitting there going, okay, this is interesting. Yeah. I'm okay with this. So I don't hate it. I mean, obviously my biggest concern is hopefully Nahem Hines is like, his knee is ultimately going to be good and he can get back to being Nahem Hines, because the reason for his injury in the first place was just stupid. Not for him, just a stupid accident that happened that would hate to see that cost him his career.
Yeah, terribly unfortunate. What was that, a jet ski accident?
Yeah, him parked on a jet ski and somebody else slamming into him.
Yeah. Absurd luck. All right. So Pete and I are going to react as usual, like we always do on the show, to some videos going around on the topics of the day and this week. We're going to start with the Pat McAfee show and talking about kind of what happened in general on Sunday. And they're going to talk a little bit about the future of Watson's contract. Now, this is, the national perspective on this is a little skewed, and we'll get that kind of straightened out in the process here, as I have some numbers from Duffin himself, Jack, so that we can look at. So here we go. Pat McAfee and Adam Schefter on the Browns Sunday, the injury, all of it.
It sucks to be a Browns fan.
Terrible.
Yeah. I mean,
Cleveland in general, because the Yankees beat the Guardians too.
Yeah, but at least they got to enjoy that. Chubb, you're right. Okay.
Nice.
But these fans, they can't even act like they're fans in conversations, because their entire team decided to take a heel turn yesterday in press conferences. And I respect them being good teammates, okay? I do respect being a good teammate. And I think we all would like our teammates to stick up for us in the manner that they did. But that one should have had a little awareness with the way it was all kind of going down. Highest guaranteed contract in history. Everything else, and team stinks. And then it happens. It's like, obviously, you never want anybody to cheer on injuries. That is terrible. It's obviously another human. But also, the rest of the team, you guys don't need to just throw yourselves into the hateable category with your fans immediately afterwards. It's like, it sucks to be a Browns fan, I'd assume. And we want to let the Dog Pound know. Keep going. We appreciate your guys' loyalty to the game.
Keep barking.
Now, on that note, Tone has a question for you, Shefty.
Yeah, Shefty, and the Browns confirmed it 5 minutes ago that DeShaun Watson did rupture his right Achilles tendon. This far into the season, with his contract, with how he's been playing, is there a world that we live in that this is the last time that we see DeShaun Watson play for the Cleveland Browns?
I think it's possible. Yeah, absolutely. And you look at that contract, he's got to come back. Wasn't playing great. He's going to have the surgery done on the Achilles. And they're going to have some decisions to make at that position. First of all, are you telling me that the Browns aren't going to go into the offseason and go place a high priority on drafting a quarterback as high as possible? Of course they are. So let's assume that they can turn their first-round draft pick into a quarterback. Well, now they've got a first-round quarterback. We've got a quarterback coming off an Achilles injury. They might have looked to trade him in the offseason. I don't know how doable it would have been. Obviously, they would have had to pay the bulk, if not all the money involved, or they would have had to compensate a team to try to take on some portion of that contract. A lot of variables. They all go out the window now that he's ruptured his Achilles. So it's a different dynamic. So he's going to come back now. He's already had 2 ACL tears. Now he's got to...
All right, I'm going to stop it here because this was the best, I guess, I could find on anybody's reaction to the Browns fans, and what happened on Sunday. I mean, people came out of the woodwork. Not only did we hear the story about how the team went behind closed doors, decided collectively they were going to come out and speak on it, right, on the fans' reaction to Watson getting hurt and the cheers that were heard. But also you've got the Michael Irvins of the world and people coming out of everybody getting on their soapbox to, kind of scold Cleveland Browns fans around the country, Pete. And I'll just say this. I am aware of the bad look that it is, right, to cheer for any human getting hurt. But I also think there are layers to this. You had weeks of your head coach and front office gaslighting you, lying to you about the quarterback's play. Is it possible that people were just cheering because they're going to see something different? And yes, in that moment, that lacks total self-awareness, and they should be better than that. But just to calm down, you got Browns fans Browns players telling the fans to be better. They're 1-6. Look at the irony in that, right? Be better, Browns fans. You're 1-6. Okay. Sorry. It was a little too much over the top as it kept piling on and piling on. And I listened to Rodney McLeod on 92.3 on Monday. There are layers to this. The Browns fans were forced to swallow the moral dilemma of this. They were forced to watch this. It's hard to be in the stadium to know how injured the player is. I just think the scolding is just over the top. I get it. It's a bad look. You shouldn't do it. Nobody should do it if you're aware of what's going on. But I think at that time, it's not everybody. It's probably just a couple hundred idiots, right? Making a lot of noise. And I don't know. It rubbed me the wrong way. The way the whole country kind of rallied. How does DeShaun Watson thing end? And it's the Browns fans who are the ones that are getting scolded at the end of this thing. It's just ridiculous.
Okay. So I have a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
How many people threw bottles at Bottlegate?
Probably just a few hundred.
But yet, that lives with forever. That's all it takes. Now, the other question I have. What was the general feeling from Browns fans when DeShaun Watson went out for the year last year after the Ravens game?
Disappointment.
Yes, because he was playing well. So here's where I have an issue. The people who are trying to say, it was because of all the off-field stuff, stop it. Because that did not happen last year. Everybody else said that. And I'm not saying you said that. No, everybody else around the league, and we got more articles about karma and all this other crap. But at the time, people were collectively disappointed because they were sitting there going, oh, man, we beat the Ravens. We're going to win the division. This is our shot. And then all of a sudden, he got hurt and everybody's crushed because they're like, finally, he's going to play well. So don't get me wrong. There are people who have been angry from a moral standpoint the whole way. But in this moment, they were cheering a guy who was hurt because he wasn't playing well. Money and all that, fine. They were cheering a guy because he wasn't playing well. So from that standpoint, and the fact that players see their fans, and it, again, could be a couple hundred, their fans cheering a guy wearing the same uniform as them. It could be anyone. Like if Jedrick Wills went down right this second in a game and was seriously hurt, I would not be surprised one bit if we had the same reaction because people do not like Jedrick Wills.
Don't you think that the same reaction would have been had in 32 other cities?
I don't know. But the problem is the Browns have this history. Tim Couch is an ugly, ugly scene. Ugly the way they cheered him when he got taken out. And that's sort of where this. Now, I don't disagree with you that this could happen anywhere else. I think some of this is just the world we live in now and the hot take society and just how generally angry people are. And I can chart some of this back to the pandemic and stuff because I see this I've seen this since the pandemic. I've seen this in high schools. The way, people have just gotten angrier at sporting events and all this stuff. So I don't disagree with the possibility that this could be a lot of places. But it's tough for me. as somebody who did not like DeShaun Watson, like personally and all the other stuff, have written about it endlessly. But I understand why players would rally and say, come on, man, this crosses the line. Now, having said that, I said this at the post game, I think Miles wishes he could re-say what he said. I think Denzel Ward nailed it in the Monday press conference where he said, listen, from a football standpoint, the guy we know in the locker room was A, B, and C, as opposed to nearly perfect and all that. It was just bad to say it that way and inelegant. But in the same way that you're saying there should be some sort of, a little bit of, I don't want to say maybe being charitable to the fans in that moment. I'm not seeing the same thing, or at least I haven't been this week when it comes to Myles Garrett. And there are people sitting there, the Browns should trade him. I never want to see him again if that's how he feels, all this other crap, which again comes back to my original point of people are just angrier and more irrational and all this stuff in the moment. So that's where I sort of have an issue with it. Now, to your point, does it get to be a little much? When a number of people and some of the people specifically coming out and doing it, yeah, it does, obviously. And then you sort of get in your Cleveland fort of going, come on, you don't, in the same way, your reaction right now is the same reaction those players are having for DeShaun Watson. It's like they're in the fort now taking on the heat. And now you're doing the same thing as a Cleveland. And I'm not disagreeing with you. I just think that's natural that you're sort of, as the Cleveland fan / media / whatever, all right, we're calling this out. We're calling it out, but we don't need everybody else to do it. So I think that's sort of where I think it gets a little awkward. But ultimately, like, to your point, you acknowledged it. It's just a bad look to cheer anybody who's hurt. But that's my problem is, yes, there are places where this would happen, and players who are playing badly would have the same reaction. But like, I don't think this is limited to DeShaun Watson. I think there are other players on this team, and I think players are aware of that and worry about that if they were to get seriously hurt, that they would have a similar reaction. And I can think the two off the top of my head are Jedrick Wills and Greg Newsome. And one, Jedrick Wills is not playing well, but I think Greg Newsome is so overly criticized at this point. It's gotten absolutely ridiculous. But either way, I don't want to see that to anybody. I mean, as I wrote and noted, like that's the most human I've ever seen DeShaun Watson appear. It's a shame it took this to get there. But that was a broken man and people are cheering it on. So, and again, a small minority, but as I draw the comparison, that's the other part. And look, that's
it works both ways. It works both ways.
But what I would say is Myles Garrett was expected to go out and be the guy who was sort of speaking for everyone. He was not just speaking for Myles Garrett. Like, he was speaking for the team. So if you are of the opinion that the Browns should get rid of Myles Garrett, you'd be running out of players of the amount of people who would be pissed off about that situation. So, and again, I hope this doesn't come as me saying you're wrong, because I don't think you're wrong. I just think in the same way that Bottlegate wasn't everybody, in the same way that we just saw on Saturday, Texas fans throwing crap on the field makes all of the entire stadium look bad, even though it apparently is a genius way to get your way and get the play overturned. Yeah. It doesn't take very many people to paint you in a bad light.
Miles, what Miles said was wrong. It's fine. I don't want to get rid of Miles. I was just saying my opinion is, I think that the way that the head coach in the front office handled this in situation with Watson kind of, and I said it multiple times before this week, it could get ugly when they come home. It just so happened to get ugly this way. I mean, they booed him when he came out too. You know what I mean? It's just a really bad look for him. I get it. It's a bad look. You shouldn't do it. The fans should have been more self-aware. But I think it got overblown on the way that people were so quick to jump on their soapbox and scold Browns fans.
Like, that's the thing. Like, I said my piece in the post game. We're rehashing it now because it's been brought up, but I was I was over it. You know what I mean? Like, move on to the next one. Now, do we want to get to the other part that Schefter brought up and me telling you why he's wrong?
Yes.
He's never going to play in the NFL again, ever. We'll never play in the NFL unless it's like preseason. We'll never set on the field, and maybe not preseason. They are never going to put that man on the field again. And he already outlined part of the reason why. One, he is a quarterback who relies on mobility to some extent.
Yeah.
Who's now had 2 ACLs and an Achilles rupture, and it's going to take forever to recover to get to be DeShaun Watson of any caliber. Not only that, it's the foot he drives off of to throw, which is going to make it longer. So there's just more things. But the Browns are never going to allow themselves to be in a situation. And he already hinted at it. The Browns are going to move on. Now, I don't know if they're going to draft a quarterback high. I'm sort of dubious on that prospect at this moment. We'll see. But they're not going to go back. They're going to do something else. They're going to either, whether it's draft a really highly touted guy, go with another veteran. Maybe Jameis is a bridge to something. Maybe they'll take somebody in the mid rounds, because right now, if you're asking me in October where I sort of view the quarterback class, I don't know how many of them are going in the first round. I think this might be a year where teams wait. Now, we'll see. I mean, things get weird and guys get overdrafted, but it would not shock me if some of these guys go way later than people project them to right this second. So that's its own thing. But either way, the Browns are going to be in a position which is in a grisly way exactly what they really wanted to be able to do. They're going to go get 3 quarterbacks or have 3 quarterbacks this offseason. DTR, I expect, will be one of them. Jameis has a potential to be one of them. And then whether it's a rookie, another veteran, or whatever, so they will have 3 quarterbacks to sort of really hash out what they want to do. And then by the time Jameis would theoretically have to come back on the active roster, which would be delayed as long as humanly possible, and there's no incentive for him to rush back. There's no incentive for the Browns to rush him back, because if he rushes back, it's to be third string and stand there.
Mm-hmm.
If the Browns rush him back, it's to be third string and stand there. Like, who wins in that scenario? Then he has to take up a roster spot and everything else. I think mostly DeShaun's going to disappear to California, and we're basically never going to see or hear from him again, realistically. Like, he may be around and do some stuff, but it's going to be very private. I don't think he's going to be around for everybody to see him because it's stupid at this point. It's not helpful for anybody. And mostly people will just use it as a way to sort of deride him or whatever. He doesn't want to put himself through that. But at the time he would theoretically need to be active, the Browns will probably have figured out their 2 best quarterbacks in that scenario, release or trade one of them, and then go in. And then in 2026, they release him and it's over and he disappears forever. He's not going to go sign up with another team. Nobody's going to want to bring that in. The PR nightmare is not worth it for anyone. And that's it. Like, I don't see a scenario, unless he's the third string quarterback and 2 quarterbacks basically get injured in the same game and somehow he has to play. And they might put a position player in first, to not do that. But they will do everything in their power not to put him back on the field. And I think that's better for everyone in this scenario.
Yeah. Because I heard, that the surgeon or whatever, or there was a statement out there that he would be ready by week 1 next year. And immediately my mind went to the past 3 weeks. Like, all common sense says he should not be playing right now, but would the Browns try to run him out there again?
Yeah, I mean, the other part of that is the other thing you have to get brought up is Kirk Cousins and how fast Kirk Cousins recovered. Kirk Cousins, I don't think, is still fully back from his Achilles. He said as much going into the after a couple games of the season.
Neither is Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins has basically said, "Look, man, they needed him to be ready to go to start, but he was still feeling the effects. He wasn't quite there. He thinks he's getting better, closer. But I don't know how many people watched him play the Falcons and the Steelers. He was just waiting to die in the back and a quarterback in that game. And some of that's the Steelers were really good on defense, but they knew exactly where he was going to be on every play because he could not move and absolutely eviscerated him. And DeShaun Watson cannot operate that way. He would just be waiting, literally would just be like a piñata at that point. So not only does he play a different style that requires more mobility than theoretically Kirk Cousins does, but he's got a history of significant knee injuries
Yes.
that are going to make this whole process more complicated. And like I said, he's not in a hurry to rush back. Like if the Browns put him on PUP, is he going to be sitting there going, you guys got to take me off the PUP list. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to get back. Like, come on, man. It's like everybody's going to sort of hold on to this as long as possible. It's not going to hurt his bottom line. He's still going to get paid every dollar he owes, and it's going to help the Browns with the cap, which is the other reason they don't want to mess around with this, because they've got an insurance policy that, and I don't know what the exact figures are. It's really murky on that, but they're going to get some cap savings both this year and then anytime he misses next year. So there's more incentive for the Browns to sort of delay this as long as possible. Allow DeShaun to sort of, DeShaun can be the good soldier and collect a massive check to avoid sort of being put out there. And I think that's part of the reason DeShaun was so upset in the moment. I think he knew the second it happened, what had happened, and his career was over.
Yeah, that's it. Agreed. As far as that insurance goes, according to Jack, and you said it was kind of murky, so I don't know how exact this is, right? But they will.
What he has reported is accurate. It gets weird, like into next year.
So they will gain $7 million in 2025 for his injury this year, and they will gain $2.6 million in 2026 for each game missed next year.
So you think they're going to let him get it back on the field quickly? No. Do you think he's going to be in a rush to get back on the field quickly? No. And it may be Nahem Hines right now. You may see that play out where they go, hey, we're going to activate him for his 21-day window. Man, it couldn't get there, and we couldn't activate him, and defers to IR. And again, I don't think he's going to go to the players union and go, man, we got to fight this, but we'll see.
Yeah. You're right. That would make no sense. You're absolutely right. The 2.6 per game is the most impactful part of that, right?
Yeah.
So
that's huge.
Yeah, Matt, that's helpful. So good stuff. Wanted to hit on that. Wanted to get a couple of those thoughts off my chest. Generally, bad look. Yes, you're right. I don't think he'll play. But there's a lot of this going around. So here is more from Schefter on this.
Ruptured Achilles. He looked, when he played, the burst that he had that made him a special player in Houston, that was not as evident to other teams when you had them watch him and assess it. Like, he just didn't look as explosive and as twitchy as he did when he played in Houston. And now you're coming off an Achilles. The strength of his game was his elusiveness and the athleticism that he displayed and the moves he made. All that's compromised right now. Who knows what's going to happen with his football future? Nobody can say that right now. He's got to have the surgery. He's got to rehab. He's got to come back.
What's the money? What's the money? I know the dead cap's like 100-something million, but if he was to say, I don't want to come back, what would the money do? Then how would it go? Do we know any of that information?
Yeah, I have it all here for you. He has a cap hit in 2025 of $72.9 million.
No matter what.
No matter what. And he's got a cap hit.
Wait, no matter what, he just asked the question if he doesn't want to come back. So that would mean he would retire. He would retire. So the money is not that.
No, what he's talking about is the money they've sort of deferred forward. That would hit. Like if they've put bonuses forward, they would still have to pay those. What would disappear immediately if he was to retire would be salary. So in that scenario, if he was to retire, and he won't, $46 million, boom, right back in the Browns' pocket for the next 2 years.
Yes. However, these numbers here, I'm going to correct a little bit in a minute. So he said 72, right? And then
in 2026 of, again, $72.9 million.
No matter what.
72.9, no matter what, the next 2 years.
What's that?
All right. So Jack has corrected this out. And as we have talked about, the most likely plan, as you already said tonight, right, is day one of the league year 2026. They restructure his contract and then release him, right?
They don't have to restructure. They just cut him. That's it.
Okay. Either way, it's a post June 1st designation. I think that maybe there's not a restructure. It doesn't matter either way. But the way the money breaks down, if you do it that way, and according to Jack's breakdown, is in 2025, it'll be a $37.139 million. That's next year. In 2026, the year you would cut him, it would be $46.124 million. And then in 2027, it would be 89.5.
Yes, keeping in mind they are going to be growing the cap every single year they're doing this. So it's not like this is the thing where people get caught up and go, oh man, how are they going to operate? They'll be fine. It won't be fun. Like they would certainly love to have that space to work with, but they are more than capable of working around it, fielding a competitive team. Even if they want to go out and sign a high-priced veteran quarterback, they could still do it.
Yes. Yeah. So, and the percentages break down to the point that the 37 and the 46, because the cap is going up, are not, that high. They're like 13, 14, 15% of the cap, which is not that brutal. The 89.5 is a lot, but it's manageable and for 1 year, right?
Yeah, I mean, again, they can work their way around it. They can plan out contracts. This is what they've been doing. They're really good at it. They've figured out a way to get around this and continue to spend near the top of the league every year. And if they have to take a step back 1 year in terms of spending or defer it, they can do that.
Yeah. And the way they structure contracts anyway is if they just doubled down on that kind of structuring, they could probably get through that year the way they want to. So,
yep, they would be fine. Man, perfect world. Ideally at that point, again, I don't know that this is necessarily the year, but at some point you're probably going to want to draft a quarterback, or I should say they're probably going to draft a quarterback every year, but you're hopefully going to have that guy who's the guy you believe in, who's on a rookie contract that sort of offsets a significant amount of that cost.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
145.8 million over the next 2 years. That would be much bigger than the Russell Wilson.
Just under 146 million the next 2 years. Now, again, he's due next year. I think the cap, those are the two cap numbers because they redid the contract at the beginning of this year. They pushed money back into next year and the year after. His cap charge this year is $20 million. So they pushed back some of that money to matching $72.9 million cap charges.
So Haslam is currently going to Roger Goodell. Can't we sell a Wednesday afternoon exclusive game to Prime to get this salary cap much bigger? Because if you give up, 100 and some million like 5 years ago with the way the salary cap is, obviously vastly different. Mm-hmm. If that salary cap continues to go up, which I think is what the Broncos said, the Broncos we'll take it. We can do without 83 million over the next 2 years. If they do 100 and oh my God, what a situation they put. Hey, once again,
new stadium coming.
Mulugeta.
Yeah.
Agent.
What a contract.
Absolute dog in that move.
It's you know what? It's depressing if you're a Browns.
Yes, I'd say. Yeah.
If you're rooting for that team, they're in cap jail to a certain extent. I mean, it's a tough position to be in. They're locked into him as a quarterback. Any flexibility was removed yesterday when he ruptured the Achilles. Oh. And the truth of the matter is they're now absolutely going to have to find a quarterback. And you have to draft one. The Niners got Brock Purdy in round 7.
All right. So you're going to hear this stuff, and that's why I wanted this. You're going to hear this stuff nationally, right? But you're going to hear this from everybody. They're going to throw out these bloated numbers, and they're going to say that the Browns are in cap jail and they have no flexibility at all. The one true thing he said is they do need a quarterback. Yep. And they will absolutely do that. But the other two things about them being in cap jail and having no flexibility are both not true, or at least not nearly as bad as everyone is going to make it out to be. And I just wanted to be clear about that for those of you that are fans, that it is possible to pivot and find success. As Jack has said to me multiple times, he expects them to compete next season. So I just think it's worth recognizing this.
So the depressing element is what you mentioned. They need a quarterback, and the draft picks are gone. They don't, they obviously don't get that stuff back. Money, like if you're asking a fan, they may care about the salary cap, but they don't care about the money.
No,
because it's not, it's Jimmy Haslam's money at that point. But the fact of the matter is that, yes, they have to figure out the quarterback situation, which whatever, but they can easily maneuver around that. They can easily, fix the issues that, again, I'm going to reiterate, we're already going to need to be fixed anyway.
Yeah.
And then just proceed from there. So this is one of the many reasons I don't think Andrew Berry's going anywhere. It's one of the many reasons I don't think Kevin Stefanski's going anywhere. But this is where we're at. And yes, that part is frustrating. The other part I would point out is I think I have to believe that there are a number of fans who are actually more optimistic now than they were a week ago, because in the worst way possible, they have made a clean move. There's no revisiting this. It's over. Whatever you think of DeShaun Watson and the prospects, it's over. So the path forward is very clear. You need a quarterback. You know who that quarterback's going to be? Not DeShaun Watson. And for a lot of people, that already immediately feels better. And that's not, I'm not going to lie. Like that's been part of the reason I felt better about this team. In addition to some of the other things that are going on is, and you and I have talked, and obviously you've been extremely frustrated with the fact that they haven't benched him. Well, problem solved in again, awful way it had to happen. But now, are you not more interested to see what's going to happen on Sunday? By virtue of the fact that you're not being forced to watch DeShaun Watson anymore, or it's not even a possibility at this point. Like, to me, I'm already believing that the Browns are going to score 20 points for the first time this season, which is an embarrassing statistic. But I think they're going to get 20 plus points this week. I am more interested in watching DTR than I am DeShaun Watson. That part of this is more interesting. Now, you can still hate the record and be frustrated about the season. It sucks. And hey, but if they go out and I'm not expecting this to happen, but let's say they beat the Ravens. People are going to be fired up and talking about, oh, hey, what can this mean? And do I think the playoffs are realistic? No. But I do think you can sort of look at this team, and if they start winning more football games and getting like to a place where you're sitting there going, I sort of recognize what this team is compared to 2023. I feel like this is a positive direction, or at least I can sort of look at this and go, hey, if they do A, B, and C, we're right back in the mix next year. Now, you may not be a championship contender, but you're going to be right back in the mix. And this is the thing that people don't get is like, and this is why we can't, whether it's forums or whatever, people are going, oh, why don't they blow it up? Because they don't have to. They've got a lot of things that are working, as much as people don't want to acknowledge it, because right now it sucks. You're 1-6, so nothing works when you're 1-6. But they've got a lot of things in place that you can feel good about and are going to stay here for the foreseeable future.
Agreed. Wholeheartedly. And very much looking forward to this team play with somebody else at quarterback, really anybody else. So, happy about that. All right. This is from 92.3 The Fan. Ken Carmen, Anthony Lima, talking about the future of the Browns front office and head coach here. So let's do this.
Love to sit here and talk about the great things I think Stefanski has done, as much as I'd like to talk about some of the really good things that Andrew Berry has done. It's going to be hard for them to save their jobs because this is only going to get worse. The players are already frustrated. Jerry Jeudy throwing his helmet. Elijah Moore suspended for a half. Okay, this stuff is going to snowball. There's no other way for it to go.
And that's why they want to take I know they want to take a look at Dorian Thompson-Robinson. You're going to need Jameis Winston in there. He is the veteran. He is a guy that gets people excited. He is a captivating speaker. There's no doubt about it. If you want to keep these guys, I mean, unless you want Jerry Jeudy to completely lose his mind.
Wait, is the organization going to dictate, though, who should play?
I don't have anything against Dorian Thompson-Robinson.
DeShaun Watson would have been benched on any other team in the NFL.
Okay. I don't have any. You're right about that. I don't have anything against DTR, but at the same time, I know they want to see something, and I don't think that he's shown anything that tells me that he's going to be a future franchise quarterback here. So the only thing that you're going to do now, unless you just don't care about the other veterans, guys who you've traded for, by the way, unless you don't care about the other veterans there, then you'll do what's necessary to get you to April. That's what you'll do. But if you want to keep some of these guys and keep their emotions with you, you're going to have to play Jameis Winston. You're going to have to take you're going to have to bring in the veteran that people take seriously. And try that first before you go to Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I believe you should play Jameis Winston because you owe it to your veterans. This is not a young 0-16 football team anymore where most of these guys should just be thankful they're playing in the NFL in an NFL jersey. There are still at 1-6, which is crazy to say, there are still viable NFL veterans on that team that deserve better. And if you're making a decision to do right by your players, Jameis Winston is starting against the Baltimore Ravens on Sunday. If you are interested in getting ready for the offseason, then DTR will start on Sunday, and you'll do everything you can to get DTR prepared. But you are also getting ready to warm up the phones on all these other veterans out there.
Okay, where to begin? I'm going to save this is why the ownership and organization is not forcing them for later, because it becomes relevant again.
Yes.
And it's idiotic. Like, it's just tired and stupid. For whatever reason, and I don't know why, Kevin Stefanski wanted to keep putting DeShaun Watson out there, wanted it to work. It didn't work. Now, the injury also sort of enabled him never to have to come off his messaging with that, which kind of also worked out for him. The idea that they can't save their jobs is idiotic, because I don't think their jobs are in jeopardy. Now, that could change, but I don't think their jobs are in jeopardy. Again, you can talk about all you want with this team. It starts with the injuries, and DeShaun Watson's only the latest one. And you can say how bad he was. Fine. It's just one more injury. They've played 4 centers. They've played at least 4 guards. They've played at least 5 tackles. We're 7 games into the season. That's how many guys have already played on the offensive line. It's insane. So injuries have killed this team. David Njoku has missed time. Nick Chubb just came back. You had all these guys on defense miss time, and suddenly they're coming back, and suddenly the defense looks better. It's awful, and watching that, it sucks. And I think, as bad as DeShaun Watson has been, I think the injuries have robbed this team of showing what they could be to start the season. So we've gotten a bad picture of what it is. And the person I think would know that better than, or the people I think that would know that better than anyone, are the front office and ownership, because they see these guys in the building who are injured. They have to visibly look at them and go, oh my God, he's injured. It's not like they are never around and see nothing like fans and media do and just go, well, you got to go win because that's the expectation. Kevin Stefanski performed miracles last year. And again, with the guys that they bring back, I would not be surprised if they start winning football games. Will it be a significant amount? I don't know, but I think they will play better football. To Ken's point, I would say Jameis Winston's probably the smart way forward. Ultimately, I don't care. I would say whoever's the best quarterback should play. Now, right this second, I believe that is Jameis Winston. So he should play. I do think the Browns are going to do everything they can to win football games, even if they potentially trade Zadarius Smith, even though they've traded Amari Cooper, because there's no sense in tanking. They've got too many things going for them. You're saying do right by the veterans. I don't even think it's do right by the veterans. It is do right by what you have said you are.
Yes.
Who you are as a football team, who you are as a head coach, as a GM and everything else, the messaging you've had. It goes against everything they've said they're going to be. And they're too competitive for that. It makes no sense. Like, you watch Kevin Stefanski after these games and he looks beleaguered. He looks completely down on everything. So clearly these losses weigh on him. I don't think their answer is, well, we're just going to sort of bail out and lose. There's no benefit there. And they don't need to do that. This is the thing. Like, because the Browns did the thing they did where they basically tore down the rubble that was 2015 that they were in a position they could do that. They want these guys they have in the franchise to be here. Myles Garrett, David Njoku, JOK, Grant Delpit, Jerry Jeudy now. Now, to Anthony Lima's other ridiculously stupid points, Lamar Jackson throws his helmet every goddamn week of the year. Every week he throws his helmet. I don't care. And if they were not frustrated, we should be pissed at this. They're 1-6. What else should they be? Should they be having a good time on the field? Like, this is where I hate the body language police. Do I want anyone throwing their helmet? No, I think it's ridiculous when I see Lamar Jackson do it. He looks like a child, and I see it translate to the lower levels of the game. So I hate when Jerry Jeudy does it. I hate that Elijah Moore did whatever he did, acted out in whatever frustrated manner that got him sat down for a couple series or whatever it was. But this is what happens when you lose football games. That does not automatically mean that things are going to get worse, because as we've just said, all I've heard for the past 7 weeks is it cannot get worse than DeShaun Watson, with data to back it up, comparing him to Jamarcus freaking Russell. So if DeShaun Watson if it cannot get worse than DeShaun Watson by virtue of putting anyone in there, it will improve. It improved with DTR immediately. Now, it didn't last. It did not last, but they immediately scored. The first play, he throws it right down the field, and they get a DPI penalty. A beautiful ball to Cedric Tillman. They get the penalty. They score a touchdown. Jameis Winston comes in. They immediately start moving the ball down the field. And yes, it's probably a little bit of a soft prevent defense, a little bit of that stuff, whatever. DeShaun Watson running the offense, it looked like the Browns were playing with 8 guys. It looked like 8 guys were on offense because there were no receivers. The ball always went to like 2 people, and there was no reads, no anything, because he would drop back, look, if his number 1 guy wasn't there, he'd drop his head and try to somehow physically will himself forward through the entire defensive line to get through, then try to make a play. So now, with 2 other quarterbacks we've seen in the course of one game with no practice reps with the ones, suddenly a whole bunch of guys are on the team and catching passes. Like, so it can obviously, could it get worse? I guess theoretically. It can also get significantly better, because that's literally all I've heard about for the past 7 weeks. So to suggest that there's only one direction this can go is asinine. It makes no sense. Could it go worse? Sure, of course it could. Yeah. Could it get better? It could get a lot better. So I reject this notion, and I don't do 4 hours of radio a day, so I can sort of get that. Like, it's difficult. One, it's just difficult on its face. Yeah, but you get into these sort of
rabbit holes.
States. You get into these points where, like, where else can I go? But either I'm gonna,
you could talk
be
yourself
frustrated
into
endlessly, be frustrated endlessly, and go to the sort of the natural conclusion of these things. Yeah. Or you just end up, what else are you going to talk about? Like, you get to this point, and like, so of course, what is the end conclusion for all these things? Well, you got to fire everybody, and so what does that do? And I continue to say this. Who is going to take over this thing with all the problems that this team allegedly has? And this is why I refute the notion that they're that far away. I think we're going to have a clip covering that where I can tear into that notion too. But it's insane. It's such a long season. They can clearly get better. Somebody in the chat was mentioning, tell me about all these good things. Good question. So let's talk about Cedric Tillman suddenly looks like a football player when any other quarterback's on the field. Now, is he great? No, he made a stupid boneheaded mistake on the one mesh concept.
No, but he caught eight balls
for 81 yards and a 2-point conversion. Boom, right off the rip, with quarterbacks who never throw him the ball, like in practice. But specifically, defense is where I'm looking. Isaiah McGuire has had 2 games where his PFF grade is over 90, and most people will be like, yeah, so what? He is a killer on run defense right now, and his pass rush win rate is 16.4%. Zadarius Smith, off the top of my head, 17.1. That's a very promising number. Now, the sample size is small, so I would say be a little bit cautious, but Isaiah McGuire has been very good as a second-year, 4th-round pick.
Very good.
Now, he needs to keep it going, and obviously, again, I temper all of this by saying small sample size. Let's monitor this. Mike Hall has played 2 games. The suspension is what it is. that's going to loom over him for the foreseeable future. Hopefully he doesn't land himself in similar circumstances. Again, I will cite PFF. He's their highest graded run defender at defensive tackle. He is 21. He has come in and he's already better at a run grade, which given his like size and everything limitations, I would have been like, there's no way he was going to be effective against the run. And he's been pretty good. And they've played him all over the line. PFF is weird with how they chart nose. I don't know how they chart A-gap the way they do. I feel like he's in the nose way more than they do. He's done a really good job. The other thing that I note is his pass rush run rate. This is the thing the Browns drafted him for because he could beat dudes. 14%. The next highest defensive tackle, I believe, is 8. He is 21. So as long as he can avoid getting himself in further trouble, hopefully he's learned from it. Hopefully he's going to get past it, and we're never going to hear about it ever again. He is 21. McGuire is 23. So if those guys continue on the path that they are going on, and you still have Myles Garrett, who I fully expect will be extended this offseason, holy crap, you've got a defensive line. Oh, wait, Alex Wright's going to be back. And even though I wouldn't say that Alex Wright had a titanic improvement, again, I will cite pass rush run rate. I think it's up to 12.3. Last year was below 10. So you've got a whole bunch of young guys on the defensive line. The thing that we have been talking about, they needed to develop, they needed to get going. Again, it's only 2 games, but it was really good. The other one I'll mention, undrafted free agent Mahmoud Diabate is playing really well. He came back from IR, had a good, I think, reasonably good first week. But when he came in for Jordan Hicks against the Eagles, he was outstanding as a run defender. And obviously they were very concerned with stopping Saquon Barkley. You know what he didn't do? He didn't miss a tackle in that game. On a defense full of guys who missed tackles, he missed 0. He also laid the wood against the Bengals this past week. He runs around, and he is a forceful player that they did not draft. So, again, and I'm not going to turn this to some big defensive Andrew Berry, though I could. Andrew Berry can't draft. 4th-round pick from last year, again, with the other 4th-round pick that we've seemingly forgot about and have given up on for some reason. 2 4th-round picks right now have a real chance to be very good players. And the 2nd-round rookie, who's 21, is already making an impact. Again, got to prove he can stay on the field. Got to both health-wise and functionally wise. He's got a real skill set. So I think that has helped them in terms of doing the stuff they've been successful with. So to sort of elaborate on that, against the Eagles, we talked about this in the postgame. They played back. They said Saquon Barkley is not going to beat us. Saquon Barkley, and at one point I saw them, Saquon Barkley shifted and 3 guys moved with him. He had 20 carries. He had 20 touches in that game for 54 yards. No other team has held him below 100 yards, 54 yards. Now, the Browns eventually gave up enough plays that they lost the game. A.J. Brown's a phenomenal receiver. Devontae Smith is a phenomenal receiver. Eventually, they were going to do enough to beat you. And again, this is another situation where like Greg Newsom's awful. They finally got him on a mesh where he was completely rubbed out of the play. Yeah, that is football. But ultimately, the game once again, as we're talking about, was decided by what? They couldn't score points. Yeah, it was not. The defense did its job. Then last week, the thing that blew me away is how much zone the Browns played. A team that has not been good at zone. That's what part of the. Obviously, they want to play man because they're really good at it and they have really talented corners, but they haven't played as well. And combine that with the fact that the Bengals seemed very surprised at the fact that the Browns played zone, because every year the Browns have beaten the Bengals. They just man up their guys and have just shut them down. And what stood out to me about that, and we talked about this on the post game, the pass rush initially in that game was not there. It took a while, and the coverage was holding up. You saw some big plays like a 4th down play by Grant Delpit taking away that snag route, some other things. Again, Isaiah McGuire has that sack with Maurice Hurst. But they played zone. They communicated better than they have since Jim Schwartz has arrived. Yeah. Was it perfect? No. Did the defense do enough to win that game? Yes. They gave up 14 points. Special teams gave up 7, gave away 4, and the offense couldn't do enough to win the game. So when I look at this and I go, Jim Schwartz talked about throwing changeups this year. He seems to have found the changeups. They seem to be going where he wants them to go, and they're working. So, I'm seeing the stuff I want to see. Young players developing. It's got to stay that way. Keep going. And I'm seeing Jim Schwartz do things he has not done in his tenure with the Browns, and they are working. So not only is he calling these other things, he feels confident enough to call them, which is important in its own right. They are working, and that is giving the Browns the opportunity. So, and I don't know if it's going to happen against the Ravens because the Ravens offense right now is just cooking. But if Jameis Winston can get them over Mount 20, they probably, and we can backtrack this, obviously. How many games would they have won if they just got slightly more offense? The answer is quite a few. Are they a playoff team? Probably not. But they would be better than 1-6, which is all that really has to happen. And nobody's going to sit there and worry about style points looking back and going, well, hey, they're 3-4 as opposed to 1-6. They're at least in the mix.
Yeah, I think that the stuff from Schwartz is very promising. That their ability to play zone, as you said, far improved from what we've seen. Like leaps and bounds better than what we've seen in the past. So that stuff all very good. And I just think that when we're talking about these guys' jobs, I think that they're going to be here. I think that both of them are going to be here. Do you think there is any world, Pete, where one of them gets fired and the other stays?
No, that's the other part where I sort of really look at this situation and go, this is one of these things that's being sort of floated that the front office is trying to get rid of Kevin Stefanski. Why? I cannot stress that Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski have a very sweet situation, in part because they are so trusting of one another in this whole situation. Now, is it possible that somewhere down the line that there's some, divorce situation where they're just tired of each other and they want to get out of this? I suppose it's possible, but I've yet to see any evidence of it this year. I mean, there are things where I think both guys can be really frustrated with the other and sort of, I think Kevin Stefanski can sort of sit there and go, oh man, the offensive line is hurt going into the year already. Like, this is really frustrating. At the same time, Andrew Berry can sort of look and get, come on, man, we're at the 2-yard line and we can't get in the end zone. I think ultimately they're both reasonable enough people to sit there and go, we are not doing enough this year. We have not been good enough this year. We have had some really bad luck on top of everything else. And man, we really botched the quarterback situation that we've got to get squared away, which is all the more reason for them to be on the same page with this, because I do think their fates are tied. And again, we keep talking about this. I don't think Jimmy Haslam's ready to eat what would probably be around $50 million to fire these guys and then have to hire people to replace the guys who have been the most successful the Browns have had since the early 90s.
Yeah, I just don't. There's no sense in moving off of the. I get that, this premise out there that someone needs to pay, right? Somebody has to pay. You can say that all you want, but the sensible move forward, at least in my opinion, for this organization, is to stay the course with the two guys that have gotten you to the playoffs twice.
Yeah, this is the whole thing that I like. The whole accountability element. The accountability is they're 1-6, and their life sucks right now. That is it. I don't understand that. Ultimately, the question that should be asked isn't who needs to be fired and who needs to take the blame for this season. It's what is in the best interest of the Browns. In the best interest of the Browns, it's that they figure out a quarterback and they move forward and we get past it. And we can talk about all this stuff, but again, then you're going to get into Andrew Berry can't draft and all this other stuff. And I will sit here and point to the 2023 class where they didn't pick till the third round. And I'm going to point to guy after guy after guy where I sit there and go, whoa, this group could be really good. And if they can just find a way to keep those processes going forward, then we will probably feel really good about this group that they figured it out. I think part of the thing that people don't get is how long it takes to get good at some of these things. And the example I will point to is the Philadelphia Eagles. Howie Roseman was destroyed for years because he wasn't a good drafter. And at one point, Chip Kelly sort of took over and got personnel control. And Howie Roseman, who was never fired, was sort of pushed into the back corner like the dude from Office Space for a while, but ultimately came back and took control. And then suddenly they got pretty good at drafting. Now, there's ebbs and flows with that. I think there are people who aren't really happy with how the Eagles have been drafting right this second. But that's how it goes. To me, it's all about, and we'll get into this way deeper sooner than we'd like to in terms of the draft stuff. I harp on this all the time. I want good processes. I thought other than Siaki Ika, which I first guessed, he may have other than Siaki Ika, which I said in the moment I did not like. I loved every pick they made in that draft because of the process oriented. And I will say straight up, they got some luck on that. They made the right gamble in terms of DeJuan Jones and balancing risk versus reward. Isaiah McGuire, you can go back if you find my articles on Isaiah McGuire, you will find why he was so good. I said, and coming into this season, I said, I went back and revisited, Isaiah McGuire to me was a better prospect than the kid the Arizona Cardinals drafted in the first round from the same team. Now, I really like the kid from the Arizona Cardinals. I thought he was really good in the preseason. But just based on the things that Isaiah McGuire did, he was young, he was super productive. He played against a really high level of competition in the SEC. And he was super athletic and seemingly seems to be a decent human being, or at least functional enough. Those four things, draft me all those guys, and then mix in the proper amount of risk versus reward, which I think DeJuan Jones qualifies. And suddenly you have 2 4th-round picks. And I know people are frustrated with DeJuan this year. Fine. He's 23. He needs to grow up. He needs to do some other
hurt.
things. And he was dealing with a knee. But if you're sitting here coming back and you go, hey, we fired the guy, we just fired the GM, and oh, by the way, these 2 third-year players who are both picked in the 4th round are starters for this team. Like, I have to question what you were doing.
Yes. Agreed. I couldn't agree more. All right. Make sure you hit like and subscribe. Appreciate you guys all in the chat. Good stuff, Pete. We're going to bounce around. Real quick video here on the – I have a feeling that you have some thoughts on this and that you might be in line with what I was thinking when I saw this. But there's some stadium stuff coming up here with the Modell law. Let's hit on this real quick. Feels a lot like maybe performance art.
The city of Cleveland is diving into the legal playbook to try to keep the Browns downtown. Now saying that if needed, the city will take on Browns owners Jimmy and Dee Haslam in court after they have made it clear they're looking toward moving the team to Brook Park. Our Stephanie Haney is here to help us break this down. And Stephanie, this is a pretty well-known law that long-timers here in Cleveland were really excited about when it was crafted. But truthfully, we never thought we'd have to use it.
Yeah, that's right, Betsy. It's Ohio Revised Code 9.67, the so-called Modell Law. We know the name Art Modell very well around here. Now, whether the law helps with the city having any chance of keeping the Browns in downtown Cleveland is the question now. This law was actually invoked a few years ago in Columbus by Mike DeWine when he was the Attorney General. That was when the previous owners of the Columbus Crew wanted to move that Major League Soccer team to Texas. A Franklin County judge ruled the law was good law and it could be enforced. But that case ended up settling, so we didn't get to see exactly what it would look like to enforce it. I talked today with City of Cleveland Law Director Mark Griffin about what the city is going to do now that the Haslams' plans to move the team to Brook Park are out in the open.
In the Columbus Crew example, then Attorney General DeWine started with an initial letter reminding the teams that they have an obligation to follow Revised Code 9.67. And then about 3 months later, he followed up with a lawsuit asking the court to compel compliance with that law. So here in Cleveland, we would similarly move forward with a letter. And then if there is not compliance with the law, we'd ask a court to intervene.
Now, I reached out to Haslam Sports Group to see if they believe the Modell law has been invoked, and their chief operating officer, Dave Jenkins, told me, quote, obviously, we have a clear understanding of the situation that resulted in the original creation of the Modell law and our current stadium efforts and desire to make a transformative investment in Greater Cleveland and the entire Northeast Ohio region could not be more different. So what we see here is Haslam Sports Group is trying to distinguish this scenario from what happened in Columbus, while the city of Cleveland believes it's similar enough to enforce the Modell law and has made it clear they will take the matter to court if they have to. We will talk about this in more detail tomorrow in a Legally Speaking segment, Betsy.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Okay, so the thing with this, Pete, is this, and you called this from the beginning, right? Like that there was going to be...
that.
Yeah, you called this from the beginning, that along the way, there was going to be a lot of situations where politicians and the city of Cleveland could make it look like they were doing one thing when allowing another thing to happen. And this feels like that very much. Even just the whole putting up the fight that they want to. Don't they just want to take the lakefront and repurpose it anyways?
Yeah, you use the perfect word for it, performance art. I think the people fighting this want to be able to say, I took on the Cleveland Browns and fought for you and all this for the sake of their career. Fine. Although that does come with a risk, because I do think that would be an expensive case to prosecute, which, by the way, I don't think they will do. I think they will go, hey, we fought it, we just can't go through with it, and then they move on. There is a more important issue with the stadium that has come up. The county, Cuyahoga County, has come out and said they were not going to provide any of the money from the sort of whatever projects account they have that would apply to construction, that they would only use it for the lakefront. Now, I hope the second part of that is crap, because that's a complete waste of money, but I approve of the first part. Now, why is that important? For all along, this was the expected action. I think the Browns knew it was going to come. So they're not going to get, I think it's 300 and something million. It's a trifling amount of money in the grand scheme. Certainly that would help, but not the real prize. What the Browns have been doing for the entire way is they've been going straight to the governor of Ohio and Mike DeWine, which they have a very good relationship with. And ultimately what they're going to try to do is get the state to provide money for the stadium. And I expect they're going to get it. This is problematic and should be concerning to fans and just anyone in general for one big important reason. If they are successful, and I expect they will be, Mike DeWine is going to go out and get to say, hey, I helped end his career ongoing. I helped get this massive dome built. Great. I get to go out. But here's what's going to happen. At some point, Ohio State will come to whoever's governor the next time, or the Cincinnati Bengals, or any other professional organization in Ohio, or college or something else, and they will go, hey, the state of Ohio just gave however much money to the Cleveland Browns to help build their stadium. Where's my money? And this is going to be set an extraordinarily bad precedent. So that is the part where I would sit there as somebody who's watching this and go, whoa, that is problematic to me. And obviously, even though I'm constantly accused of being the mouthpiece of the Haslams, and maybe JW will set me straight when he calls me on Friday to tell me my talking points. That's the part that would bother me the most. As I've said, and I will continue to say, I love the idea of the dome. I love the idea of what they want to do with the project. I just want them to pay for the whole thing, take all the risk and reap all the rewards from it, and keep the taxpayers out of it. But that is where I think they're going to ultimately circumnavigate this whole process and just go straight to the state, get the money that way. And then, you're going to get your dome, but then you're going to sit there and go, why are all these teams lining up for money in a state that can't really afford it to buy this stuff? That's part of the So my whole thing with that element is like, if you're somebody who's opening a restaurant, you're probably not doing it because a stadium was built there. You are probably building it because you feel good about the overall situation. In other words, you would feel probably better about building a stadium when you know you're going to get 81 home games plus playoffs, or you're going to get 41 home games plus playoffs. You're not going. You might get a food truck. You might be inclined to get something that can be mobile and go, hey, I can go to the stadium on game day and sell stuff. But I'm probably not super inclined to go brick and mortar, where that's part of the reason I think ultimately this benefits everyone to get the Browns out of downtown Cleveland. I think downtown can sort of, use the resources that they would not have to use on the stadium and build other things, whatever that is. If it's better, if it's the arts, if it's whatever that would allow more business. I think it would take some of those pay lots out. Obviously, going to have to keep a number of them, but I think some of those pay lots might be repurposed into businesses or things that people can use that make downtown more attractive. But like, if you are somebody who the Cleveland Guardians were in the ALCS, the Cavs season was about to get ready to roll. If the Guardians made the World Series, you could have theoretically been in a situation where the Cavs, the Guardians, and then potentially the Browns are all playing at one point. If just if just the Browns were not part of that equation, it's probably very manageable. But when you add the Browns into that equation and just the amount of crap that space, it's just space.
Yeah.
I look at sort of a football stadium like an amusement park. I would not want Cedar Point in downtown Cleveland. Like, I would want it separate in another place you can go. Now, here again, I love the idea of building the dome and having things sort of exist around it, but I don't want that to sort of, somehow be responsible for supporting a community economically. I don't think that's realistic. And ultimately why I think downtown would benefit by not having to deal with the Browns being there. And I think that's really what they want, even if they don't want, even if they're going to put up a tough front. I think they will find out that they have way more creativity and more options as opposed to putting all of their money into this monolith that sits empty for most of the year.
Agreed. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And they, you called this one from the beginning. A lot of this, and there's some people pointing out in the chat, which is why I posted that, Jungman Jess saying the Browns taking all that revenue to Brook Park. That's why they're fighting. That's not why they're fighting, because they'll still be able to build on the lakefront. And as Chef said, I ran restaurants, and if they cannot stay open because of 10 days a year,
right,
they're in trouble already. So I think that's well stated there. So as well. All right, let's get to the highlight portion of the show here tonight. I know you were waiting for this. Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, talking about the big news of the day, I guess. Big news, depends on who you are. But Stefanski, for the first time in his tenure, going to hand off. It is big news, though, Pete, because, he hasn't not called plays for a long time, right? I mean, he's been here for 4 years. He called plays the entire time. He called plays in Minnesota. It was a big part of the reason he got the job, I think. You think that's fair to say or no?
I mean, I think he's a good play caller, and that's been a big reason why he does it. I think it's been a very collaborative process with Alex Van Pelt, and has been with Dorsey up to this point. So the fact that he's not doing it is newsworthy in the sense that he's not doing it, but like he's still going to be heavily involved. We're still going to see, obviously the script is the script that will be done before the game starts. And that's potentially 10 to 15 of your plays. So yeah, it's a deal in that he's not the one doing it, but he's still gonna be on the headset. He's still gonna be right in there doing it. But like, is it the tide shifting news that people want it to be? No. And it's really strange to me that we've sort of seen it turn into this, because like when Ken Dorsey was brought in, all I heard from people was Ken Dorsey should call plays. Ken Dorsey should call plays. Kevin Stefanski should manage the game. I still don't know what that means. But that you brought in Ken Dorsey, you should allow him to call the plays. And then they do the thing that these people want, and they're going, oh my God, this must mean the owner's meddling and that the dysfunction is rampant, as opposed to the Browns are 1-6, and they're looking at all options on improving the offense. And the thing that jumped out to me immediately was, and we've talked about this the past couple of weeks, is like, which game was that? It was Washington. Second half Washington, the third quarter. JOK punches the ball out. They get the ball. They get down the field to the 2-yard line in 2 plays. And then all of a sudden, there's the false start. There's the timeout because they couldn't get the play in. Yeah. There's another penalty with another false start, I think, or shift or whatever. And then they have the wrong number of players on the field, and then they end up taking the penalty and kicking the field goal. To me, that is where I look at this and go, if Ken Dorsey being put in the driver's seat clears that up and they are more clean in their operation, that's all I'm interested in. That's my focus, because that Washington game was obviously the most glaring issue, but it happened last week as well, where we're still sitting there, the play clock's late, or we're having dysfunction at some point. It's often these high leverage situations, and I can't fully tell what's happening, but I suspect it's Kevin Stefanski and Ken Dorsey are talking about what they want to do. And it may be Kevin Stefanski saying, hey, Ken, what do you want to do here on this play? And then they're not getting cleanly enough. And I'm wondering if it's simply a matter of Kevin Stefanski wants to take himself out of that, and that might save 5 to 10 seconds on the play clock, allow the quarterback to be in the best possible situation. The other part that we talked about in the offseason, DeShaun Watson was adamant he loved Kevin Stefanski being there, not just to call the plays, but to sort of give him notes, to give him keys to sort of down situational stuff. And that all of a sudden they're making this change now that DeShaun is out and Jameis is in there. Again, they're not, the offense is not working well. They still haven't scored more than 20 points. So from that standpoint, you're like, okay, let's do something else and see if it works in a way that sort of makes sense. But it may just be that like Ken Dorsey and Jameis are more on the same page than Kevin Stefanski and Jameis are, that they feel confident in what they want to do and that's going to allow them to have a cleaner operation. But of course, I'm sure this clip I have not seen yet, but I assume this is going to be ownership meddling that's causing this.
A lot of it. So buckle up. Here we go. We get a little wild here, but into conspiracy theory. But yeah, this is a lot of people have taken the conspiracy theory angle to this. I mean, there's a lot of reasons being floated out there. This is why this is happening. Multiple people, and not, saying that this is the first, like they're forcing Stefanski out, which, you're right. I don't think that's the truth at all. I think it's probably most accurately the process is them collaborating too much, and it's causing them to have penalties on the field, and maybe it's time to step away, try to shore up some of the process stuff, away from play calling, still be involved, but, maybe let Dorsey do it. The timing, I feel like, is weird because if there was ever a time you were going to shift a little bit back towards what Stefanski does, it feels like it would be now when Watson is gone.
Well, and if ownership was trying to meddle, like if you're saying, let's put it this way, if Kevin Stefanski is worried about his job, he'd probably keep play calling because he'd bet on himself. Why would he defer to Ken Dorsey in this situation if he feels like he's got to try to save his job? Is he going to offload this responsibility to somebody else for his own job? I doubt it.
There's a world where he could frame it as, and this is, I'm not saying this, I'm just
as the fall guy. Yeah. I don't think that works when you started 1-6.
I'm saying you could frame it as like, say, you could frame it either way. I mean, let's just think about, I'm sure he has smart people around him. Like he could frame it as, say they do really well. Well, I took a step back and at the right time and this and that, and he could frame it as that. Or if they do really badly, he can certainly make his resume look nice. I'm 2-time coach of the year, whatever it is. I'm just saying, like, there's a way to spin it both directions.
True.
And at this point, you might just be so fed up with an offense that really isn't yours fully. Yes, you had a say in it, but like here, there's a lot of Dorsey stuff involved here. Just you do it, right? I don't know.
Yeah, and we talked about this with the Mike Vrabel hiring. Like, ownership. There was people saying ownership forced this on them. Like, no, I think Kevin Stefanski is confident in his own skin that he thought Mike Vrabel can help us be a better football team. I want to bring him in, and I think in this scenario, like, I think Kevin Stefanski is operating with the best interest of the team in mind. If he feels, and I have to believe this because it's the only logical conclusion that Ken Dorsey is going to help this team play better, then he's going to do it. He's going to trust his guys. Like, there's a reason guys want to come and coach for Kevin Stefanski is because he's not a guy who's just going to say, I'm doing it. He's not going to say to anybody, I'm driving the bus. He empowers his coaches to do their job. He lets these guys coach. That's part of the reason this is attractive. This is part of the reason that guys think that not only is coming to Cleveland good for them in the short term, but good for them in the long term. That's going to help them build their job up. So I think this is a selfless action in many ways that Kevin Stefanski is trying to do right by the players. And look, again, if the suggestion is that ownership is forcing him, I will tell Kevin Stefanski once again, do it your way and get fired.
Yes.
Get $25 million or whatever it is and get fired and look great because you got away from an organization that cannot stop doing stupid things. Again, this is another reason I don't think that's involved. But I just look at it as you see this over and over and over with him where he's trying to do right by the team as much as he can. And I believe that 100% is the case here.
Okay. All right, here we go. Let's. I don't believe at all that ownership has anything to do with it at all. I agree with you. Let's. And I do think it may be very process related. So, let's see what. Let's see what these guys got to say.
You guys, Jay and Bull, align with Jason that this just screams.
I have one problem with it.
First thing I thought of.
I have one problem with it. We talk about controls in the experiment. If the Browns come out and score over 20 for the first time this season, let's say they put up 35 on a Ravens defense that is, by the way, I think this team's going to the Super Bowl. But if in the near future this Browns offense springs to life and is awesome, here's the question everybody's going to have. It's one they asked in New England for 15 years. Coach or quarterback?
Yeah.
We can't figure out what smells in the trash if you take all of it out at once. And so
they have Tom Brady. We have Jameis Winston.
But here's the problem, Bull.
Yeah.
If they play great in 2 weeks, because I'm not giving them any, they're not going to play great against Baltimore. Let's say they do.
I don't know. Baltimore's defense is not that great.
I think Baltimore is a Super Bowl caliber team. I just do. But let's just say that they play great. They put up a 35 on Baltimore.
Yeah.
What is the number one topic of conversation going to be the following Monday?
Quarterback or play caller?
That's it. What?
No.
You got to be able to.
That's everybody's going to be, hey, we scored 35 freaking points.
Yes. I mean, what?
And at some point, you're probably going to say, hey, Kevin Stefanski, great call, letting Dorsey call the plays. And Jameis Winston, hey, he's a hell of a lot better than DeShaun Watson was. Man, how bad was DeShaun Watson? Like, I'm fascinated by the notion that, like, all of a sudden everybody's going to be super negative about winning as opposed to thank God they beat the Ravens. It is a fascinating conversation to me. Like, you want Kevin Stefanski to hire good people. This would be evidence that he hired good people. You want, and the other conversation he's not addressing, and I will probably come up at some point.
Yeah.
Joe Flacco, who? It'll be, oh, man, this was the reason they let Joe Flacco go. Look at Jameis. Like, there's all these, but ultimately, nobody's going to care. They're all going to sit there and go, hey, we won the football game. Hey, our offense looks good, even without Amari Cooper, and be very excited about that. Like, this is the world Jay operates, which is fascinating to me. And again, I have the based Bull continues to be realistic and rational in this conversation. I feel bad for him. He's constantly shouted down for pointing out very, very reasonable things. Like,
yes,
Jameis Winston isn't Tom Brady.
Yeah, very obvious. All right, let's continue here as this gets better.
Is this, oh my God, Ken Dorsey's walking on water? Or there's going to be a fraction of the fans that say, oh my God, Jameis Winston is this year's Joe Flacco. I know, but we don't know what it is.
Well, Ken Dorsey was a horrific play caller in Buffalo. And the offense took off.
But he had a history of being a good play caller.
But he had done a good job the year before. This is ridiculous. There's no way, Kevin. There's no way he made this choice on his own, right? Why is he such a wimp? Why does he let Jimmy push him around?
Bull fell off.
I don't know. Listen, I wouldn't be surprised if at 3 o'clock today I read that Kevin Stefanski has issued his resignation.
No, because then
he doesn't get his money.
Make him fire you.
He's going to get his money. He's going to end up in Philadelphia, guys.
Oh, my gosh.
That's where he's going.
I don't know. I mean, listen, Kevin Stefanski deserves plenty of criticism for this year. He's
not immune from it.
Yes.
He is absolutely
I would not fire him
because
I'm not going to fire a coach for having one bad season. We don't generally, you fire a coach because he's shown you a track record that he can't get the job done. That's why I'd fire Zach Taylor. I wouldn't fire Kevin Stefanski because I feel like he's overachieved overall.
Is he begging them to? I don't know. I don't know what's going on.
I don't know.
Here.
And listen, we don't know that this was not his choice. It just seems to make no sense. Like if you're going back to
what have you?
What are they going to play? Spread with Jameis?
Zach? Like, are you hearing anything?
No, I mean no.
I know. I thought maybe you were getting text from.
No, because they're still in the press conference, and then availabilities and the locker room opens at 12:45. I'm headed there right after the show. I was going to go to the locker room today. I don't have any more information than anybody else does at this point. It just doesn't. It's just not logical.
Really?
If you're going to make Dorsey the play caller, make him the play caller at the beginning of the season. This is his system, allegedly.
It's not.
And DeShaun's the quarterback for the system. But to do it when DeShaun goes down
makes no sense.
Makes zero. And as you're transitioning back last week, he was very much transitioning back. At least to me, it looked like he was transitioning back.
Do you think that could have had anything to do with it? That DePodesta and Haslam saw that, here comes his old offense creeping back. We've got to do something.
Dude, that is the most absurd thing I've ever heard in my life.
So Jason Lloyd's a really smart guy, smarter than this. This is just Ken Dorsey was not a bad play caller in Buffalo, and the numbers back that up. Like, yes, there were things that were different, but they were certainly not bad. And there are people in Buffalo who will tell you the same thing. But more power to Joe Brady. Ken Dorsey is fine. This is not Ken Dorsey's offense. This is Kevin Stefanski and Ken Dorsey's offense. They literally got together and said, hey, what are we going to do? And what was the topic for the whole offseason? We're building this offense. We haven't figured out quite what it looks like. But the idea that Kevin Stefanski would say, hey, I've got all this stuff that works over here. I'm just going to put it in the dumpster makes no sense. Like they took the stuff that Kevin Stefanski was doing that fits this personnel that worked and kept it. You see it in games, and then they added the stuff that Ken Dorsey's added. Now, the concept of choice routes, that is not an offense. That is a feature of an offense that does some things. And yes, there's certainly Ken Dorsey flavor in this. In the same way that, as I said at the time, when this whole thing was happening, you would see Alex Van Pelt's impact in absentia because you didn't know what it was until he was gone. So the idea that this is Ken Dorsey's offense and you should be calling it whatever. It's their offense. They both made it. In fact, DeShaun helped. Whatever you want to say about that. So they didn't just turn it up. Why would Kevin Stefanski, the two-time coach of the year that has been brought up in this segment, just say, hey, I'm going to give up my offense and you can do it? When he's had success with all these different quarterbacks, it doesn't make any sense on his face.
Well, yeah, that's my question. What you just said. Like, why? I guess I don't get why. Like, I talked about the reasons that he might be doing it for political gain. I don't know. I guess I don't understand why he's doing it now. Like, if you were going to take, like, I get doing it when Watson was quarterback. We talked about at length about how, the whole reason that Dorsey was hired was for
maximize
Watson.
Yeah.
Maximize Watson. That's your job. Watson's out now. So why pivot here? I guess I'm at a loss for that.
I just think it comes down to Kevin Stefanski is willing to do whatever it takes that he thinks it's going to make this team better. This is another example that they're not giving up. They're not waving the white flag, and they're trying to win football games. And,
wouldn't you argue that him taking over and running his stuff with Winston would make this team the best possible team it could be at this point?
No, because I watched Jameis Winston play for the Saints, and they do a lot of the stuff that Ken Dorsey wants to do. Or I should say, the part of the playbook he's likely to call from. Jameis Winston with the Saints was, boom, get the ball out. And you saw it just on Sunday. You saw him get the ball out right away. You saw DTR get the ball out. Yeah. I would say both those quarterbacks, it's fascinating to me that right off the rip, DTR and Jameis looked more comfortable on the offense that Watson helped design than Watson did.
They did.
Which just sort of, and we'll see what happens. Maybe they will both be disasters, but it would just cement the point that Watson was every bit as bad as we all thought he was. And yes, there are other mitigating factors we can talk about and all this other stuff, which is why hopefully, Wyatt Teller comes back and some of these other things get squared away, that they can play better. But again, I just look at this and say anything to get this thing better, and specifically anything that's going to figure out the process element that has been killing this team at crucial times, that if Ken Dorsey is unabridged in that situation is better, great. The other thing that you sort of have to obviously, this is the case, is obviously beyond the script, Kevin Stefanski's probably going to work on one set of plays he really likes. Ken Dorsey's going to work on another set of plays he really likes. Now, does Jameis sort of fall into one camp or the other? I don't underestimate the point that theoretically Jameis could be a factor in this decision, that it has less to do with the offense and more to do with just rapport and feel and confidence and just doing right by the thing. But again, to me, the biggest thing for me continues to be the operation piece. Get that cleaned up. I don't care about the rest of this. I don't care about all the other stuff. Figure that out. That is my job one. Beyond all this other crap is figure that out, so we're not sitting there, the play clock's about to run out on the goal line and we can't get the play in.
Yeah, and if I was pushing back, and I agree with you that, and I think it may have very much to do with rapport with Jameis or whatever. And I don't know, to your point, I don't know about this, what he ran with the Saints. I don't know. So if it looked like this, then that makes sense. Right. We've seen Stefanski be successful at getting plays in on time and do this on his own. So why not lean into what you do so well? And we've seen you do successfully for, 3 years, then hand it off to somebody else who I don't know.
So the other part about that is obviously, and people get hung up on the Stefanski offense. His offense has been completely different depending on what year he's run it.
It's different week to week, which is what makes him good.
We go back to Baker Mayfield and was constantly play action rollout stuff, that stretch play action stuff. Joe Flacco wasn't doing that. Jacoby Brissett wasn't doing that. They were operating from the pocket because that's where they were successful. And again, we talk about
in 21 defenses were all over that. They stopped it.
Right. And we talk about the fact that Kevin Stefanski has basically said to his quarterback, I'm not going to call any play you're not comfortable with, that you have the veto power. So that is going to help shape what the plays look like. So general concepts and some of the stuff they do. Yeah. Kevin Stefanski is sort of a blueprint, but it's wider ranging than people think it is.
Yeah.
But I just, anything to help this team get better when you're 1-6, if not now, when, and I get your point that maybe it could have happened earlier, and potentially if Watson stayed healthy, maybe this was still going to be the move. I don't know, but again, so many of these people were clamoring, do it at the beginning of the season, and now they're mad that they're getting it now and that this must be an ownership play.
I'm the opposite. I just don't. I like him as a play caller. I think that's one of the things that he does best. I wish he wouldn't give it up.
Yeah. And then if Kevin Stefanski's trying to get himself fired, I would go George Costanza, take out Otto Graham stuff, wear it, drive with the trophies behind the car, whatever. If he wants to get fired, he can get himself fired. That's the part where it's you assume he's a coward because he's acting in the best interest.
Yeah, that's absurd.
He believes in the best interest of the team.
Call him a wimp? Are you serious?
And then, it's funny because he says he's a wimp and also doesn't want to fire him. So that's a little weird to me.
It's crazy.
Again, do what you can do to help your team. You're coming up at some point. You're saying, I want to do anything I can to help this team. That is Kevin Stefanski's job.
I don't know. I'm sorry. I wish I could give you great answers. I don't know.
Look, I don't know either. I'm just making a guess.
It didn't look any better. They didn't move the ball last week. DeShaun was on pace finally for 200 yards, but it was all this, But whatever. The numbers were decent, but the offense wasn't.
I think you mean dink and dunk.
Oh, he's right. That was frustrating until they actually were pushing the ball a little bit down the field before he got hurt. And then DTR.
Finally.
And then DTR immediately, first play, that deep back shoulder fade. And then Jameis Winston wasn't afraid to throw the ball. Again, this is where I part of the reason I'm very interested to see what this game's going to look like. I want to see what's different, because here's the thing. If we come out of this game, we're it looks the same. What was the point? I'm fine with that ultimately, as long as the play calling operation is fixed. Because ultimately these guys are talking in terms of all these meetings and trying to get squared away on this. Like we heard about them putting more of a focus on collaborating and getting on the same page or whatever they were trying to do. And it seemingly did not work. So this may have been the next natural step.
Yeah.
Really moving the ball all that well. Who knows?
No, they weren't.
There is no. This defies logic. This is just throwing it at the wall and seeing what sticks.
I just got a text from somebody that would have insight on this, and they said it's got to be Jimmy.
I mean, Bull, think of the train of thought here.
Stop it.
Hold on. I didn't mean to stop it right there. Here, hold on.
Yeah.
They fired AVP this summer. Well, let's go chronologically. They fired AVP this summer. They brought in Ken Dorsey to implement a spread RPO system to fit what DeShaun wanted, right?
Yep.
You tell me when I go astray here.
Yeah, the only thing you left out is they pretty much cleaned house on the offensive side.
No, I'm saying, yeah.
But
I'm
yes,
just saying, we're just going chronological.
Your initial premise is correct.
Fire AVP, hire Dorsey to implement spread RPO concepts for DeShaun. The offense through the first 7 weeks of the season did not really work. DeShaun's out, so the quarterback that was here to do spread RPO is now injured. You have a quarterback who's traditionally excelled in play action under center, traditional West Coast offense. And now that's your quarterback, you're going to hand over play calling duties to the offensive coordinator you brought in to help maximize DeShaun Watson.
Completely backwards as far as I see.
That chronological order is correct, right?
Jay, I think he's got it right.
Yeah.
What were you saying?
They call the same offense. Additionally, Jameis can run RPOs. We saw DTR run RPOs.
Yeah.
We put way too much emphasis on RPOs. Like, it's a cool concept. You know who runs RPOs? High school teams run RPOs. It's not like this. We turn this into this world-breaking thing. Like, these are intelligent guys who have been able to run offenses. Like, maybe it doesn't work for everybody, but like, it is not nearly that difficult when you're reading one key. It frustrates the crap out of me that Watson was so bad at because he's processing so slow. But I watched DTR do it without issue because he's done it. He's been doing it. Did all the time at UCLA. Jameis has done it. We'll probably have no problem doing it. This is where you sort of end up overanalyzing, and it doesn't get you anywhere. Like, saying it defies logic. They're 1-6.
Yeah.
And they haven't scored points. So this is a natural reaction to try to score more points, to try to clean up their operation, to try to get a better product on the field. Like, this is the whole reason you're talking about firing these people, is because they're 1-6. So what is the natural reaction to do? Try something different. And again, I hope this isn't like randomly I give up, do something else. I think this was thought out. We know.
No, I'm sure it
Based
was.
on-
We know Stefanski is calculated, and he's not just going to make a decision at the whim of this. I'm sure he put a ton of thought into this before giving it up, right? In the face of question after question after year, he's kept play calling and proved everybody wrong last year in doing so, working miracles in doing it with 5 different quarterbacks. So for him to give it up, you would think that he put a ton of thought into it and a ton of there has to be a good reason behind it. I'm just not so sure what that reason is. It's not,
and obviously, unless he comes out
clear to me.
Unless he comes out and says it,
we're not going to
have a definitive answer. I can just provide you with answers that make sense, at least to me.
Agreed. Process makes sense. I just wonder, like, what do you think the long-term vision is for this? Like, how does he get it back?
Get play calling back?
Yeah.
You could say I'll call plays now.
He just takes it back at some point.
Good. I mean, I don't know. Kevin Stefanski, the one thing I know is he wants to win football games, and he will do whatever it takes to do that. So if Ken Dorsey is going to put them in the best position to win football games, I think he's going to give it to Ken Dorsey. If he feels like that's not the answer, and maybe that changes in the with another quarterback in the offseason or something else changes, he may feel better wanting to call the plays. That again, I just look at this as a selfless act on Kevin Stefanski saying, and I think some of this is sending the message to his team. I will do anything to help you guys win games, even if that means sort of me stepping down and, handing off this responsibility, which, by the way, I don't think players care. Like, this is the other thing. Players don't care. They just want the plays. They're not sitting there going, oh, man, he's the play caller. This is this is why I always downplay this crap, because players aren't sitting there going, man, I hope this guy becomes the play caller. I hope this guy like, we make way bigger of a deal of this than the team does, which is ultimately all I'm really concerned with. However, I can say, I would say theoretically it could be a metaphor that Kevin Stefanski is willing to do anything to win games and sending that message to his team, which might work. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it came from ownership. I think you put a ton of thought into it. I'm sure there's a really good reason for it. I think it could be process related. You don't think there's any chance there's any political angle in this at all?
I just don't think he thinks like that. Because again,
his dad was a GM. I mean, got a lot of smart people around him.
Theoretically could. I mean, if he wants to be political, he should just come out and say, to release the Sun Reporter, I didn't want DeShaun Watson in the first place. Boom. That's the political move. But I get what you're saying. It's not, obviously he doesn't want to create a problem. I get it. I don't think he thinks in those terms. And I think the contract extension empowers him not to think in those terms. And I don't think the Browns want to exist in a situation where they're doing that, because they've done that before and it blew up in their face horrifically. So I think he's just looking at this. How can I help my team win football games? Now, maybe I'll be proven wrong on this one, and there's some ulterior motive there, but I think it just comes down to how can I best help my team win football games? And again, bigger deal to media and fans than it is to the players. But if it works, it works. And then it becomes, hey, this was a smart move. He did what he had to do, sacrificing himself, and it worked. That pushed the right button. Great.
Now, I don't know how you make that make sense.
I thought
there's nothing about
it that's
logical. Nothing. But it's the Browns.
That's why I say I know we don't know. But to me, it just seems like another impulsive Jimmy move.
That's what it feels like.
And
he's a busy man.
I don't want to sit here because I wear so many
Jimmy.
hats. I don't want to sit here and say definitively it's Jimmy, because I just found out when you guys did 6 minutes ago.
And you're the journalist of the bunch. We're opining.
So I can't. But I mean, it feels like it was someone above. I mean, Kevin's saying it was solely his decision. What's he supposed to say? Of course he's going to say that. Yeah. What else is he supposed to say? But it certainly feels like.
Yeah. Kevin woke up this morning and
he could go half baked
confidence in
and start telling everybody.
Don't you think Dorsey was forced on him in the first place? Most likely.
Oh my God. Why? He's the 2-time coach of the year with every bit of leverage he possibly could have. He could have walked out of the door and gotten a job immediately at what would clearly be a better organization.
Yes.
It would be definitively a better organization if that's the world he's operating under. It makes no sense. Bull, if I give you $25 million for 3 years to work at Ultimate Cleveland Sports Show, and Jay told you had to do this, and you go, okay, fire me, because you realize how much power you have at that point. You can walk out the door with all that money. Of course you're going to do it. Like, who are we kidding here? Use common sense. You're smarter than this.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, Jimmy dictating all this stuff just seems so far-fetched at this point. Like, and why? And what would make him force this hand right now? Like, what makes Jimmy want to change the play caller? And you know what I mean? Like, just seems wildly speculative.
Make any sense? The whole concern for Jimmy Haslam right now is reduce embarrassment, which this doesn't necessarily do,
and build a dome.
And build the dome. That is priority 1, 2, and 3. Build the dome. Yeah. All he's worried about is he sitting there going to meetings and talking about his concerns with the team? Undoubtedly, but he does not want to make this worse than it is. So
I mean, how foolish would that be? Even if he wanted to throw his weight around and say Kevin is a wimp behind the scenes, how foolish do you have to be to just be like all willy-nilly, just He doesn't know about the process on the field and who should be playing calls or calling plays and doing this. He's not going to walk down there and be like, I want Dorsey calling plays from now on. I mean, that just is absurd. I refuse to believe that's the truth.
Beyond all that, I think he's just way more. Listen, I think ultimately, as mad as he is about the Browns, as disappointed as he is with the Browns about all this stuff, Tennessee beat Alabama. I don't think he's worried about who's calling plays this week. I think he's focused on enjoying the fact the Volunteers beat Alabama, and he's perfectly happy with that, in addition to getting the next step in the process with his dome. I just don't believe that ownership is nearly as involved in this stuff, other than being a listening. He wants to know what's going on. He lets the team operate because he knows if he does the wrong thing and suddenly he's going to have to replace these people in a really bad spot where he's fired. He's now gotten rid of the people who have led him to the most success he's ever had with a ton of guaranteed money. It's just, I don't believe it, but I could be proven wrong. Certainly.
Yeah. I mean, certainly it could be, but at this point, that seems far-fetched. And the most logical reason is the one that you've just kept saying, is that if Stefanski has any backbone at all, he's not putting up with anybody dictating anything to him as the head coach of an NFL football team. He can go get a job wherever he wants.
If he's going to be able to stand up to the 300-pound guys and all the players, come on, man. Guaranteed contract. It just makes no sense.
Yeah. All right. Here we go.
Yeah,
I did.
Yeah. We talked about that at the time.
So why doesn't Jimmy just
sell the team?
And again, it feels a little unfair because we don't know for sure about any of this stuff. We don't know.
But Bull, the reason we don't know is because they've got a steel curtain.
Right.
And they don't let us in on how this.
Okay, pause it.
They should.
Steel curtain. Was it not this show last week that told me it was constantly leaking all over the place?
Yeah, it was leaking.
There's leaks all over this place. You can't trust anybody in that building. And now it's a steel curtain? Which is it?
No, they were leaky on the Ayuk trade.
The Ayuk trade, which of course they weren't. The 49ers were, but I was told, this man told me
said it.
The Browns were constantly leaking. Could not be trusted. This is the Browns front office. They cannot be trusted. And now there's steel curtain. Man, that's a big difference.
Huge difference. And I want my NFL organization to be a steel curtain. They operate best when we don't know. Yes, we are speculating because the Browns are 1-6 and stuff is kind of shitty, right? As a fan. But if things are going well, you want it to be a steel curtain. Even when they're bad, you want it to be a steel curtain. That's
more than anything. I just want them to be a unified front in whatever they are doing, which I have no reason to believe they are not.
Agreed.
We are basing that entirely on reputation, which is becoming very dated at this point.
Yes.
But all teams do that, though, Jay.
Most teams do that. But the reason that's problematic, if you're winning, who cares?
That's true.
Carte blanche, man. Is it Robert Kraft? Is it Bill Belichick? Now they're feuding. Who cares? But when you're not winning, your shareholders are us, the media and the fan base. We're the shareholders because if we go away, there is no team. If we stop going to games.
That's not even remotely true. Oh, no.
Nope. Broadcast rights are all they need. Fans are great. People in the stadium are great. That is bonus money. TV money drives the bus on this one. They could play in front of an empty stadium and still profit. Again, this is outdated thinking. I don't in some part of me wishes this were true, but mostly doesn't because fans are irrational. They are a mob. They are the Roman Colosseum at the worst points in terms of how, a person is generally reasonable. A mob is completely the opposite. And this is where what happens. The Browns are losing and people want to do things like trade Myles Garrett. They want to fire everybody. There you go. COVID, boom, empty stadium. They made the playoffs. There you go. So he wants to live in this world that doesn't exist anymore. It's the same thing when he talked about how nobody wants to come here, despite the fact we are constantly hearing about how players love coming here because if for no other reason, the Browns pay them handsomely to do it and make sure that they structure their cap in a way so they can pay a whole lot of people. They have not had a problem attracting talent in the same way. You know, Brandon Ayuk obviously being a notable exception, but he didn't want to go anywhere. As it turned out, he didn't want to go anywhere. So it's not really like he was specific to Cleveland. But hey, it is what it is. I'm lost on how you're talking to me about how Ken Dorsey's philosophy makes sense. I don't know what world he lives in. This world that Jay Crawford continuously lives in makes no sense to me as it relates to the Browns.
Yeah, it doesn't.
There's a problem.
Yeah.
But so you have to have a level of transparency. And here's what we know. Paul DePodesta holds the title of Chief Strategy Officer. Okay. Well, what then is the general manager doing? What power does the head coach have? Who is actually handing in the draft cards?
Yeah.
We don't know. And because we don't know,
it's not Paul DePodesta. We do know it's freaking Andrew Berry. This is so absurd. I'm sorry.
Chief Strategy Officer has a specific role. Now, there is a point where it can get murky, but he's a sounding board largely. Yes, he's in the room and can offer feedback, which but just by virtue of that gives him a certain amount of power. But like, I don't think, and I've answered this question, like there's this suggestion that Paul DePodesta is getting game plans.
Yeah. Yeah.
Paul DePodesta would have to know a whole lot about football, which everybody assumes he does not because he's a baseball guy. And then if I handed him our offensive game plan for this week against Cloverleaf, it would have English words in it, but there'd be a whole lot of things that would make no sense to him because he would have to learn the language that the Browns use or we use or anyone else uses in all three phases of the game. So that's from formations to plays to checks. That's just offense. Then you're talking about personnel and how that would drive things. That's defense in terms of how they align it, their terminology for everything, calls, checks, all that stuff. And then we're still not done. We got special teams. And then this has evolved from year to year to year. Why would he waste his time trying to learn all this stuff to then get game plans? It would make no sense to him. It's a waste of his time. It doesn't make any sense. Him suggesting who should play makes no sense.
Yeah.
This is where, like,
his job is to like package information, right?
Send Jay Crawford a game plan and see if he can make any sense of it. And he wouldn't. He'd have to go ask any number of people in terms of football terminology. The suggestion that Paul DePodesta is taking so much time out of his day, which is a real job, there are real things he has to do, that he's going to take all this time to learn all of this stuff to just critique it, does not hold any water. And if you think about this for more than 30 seconds, this becomes plainly obvious to you. And the same, he could absolutely, I mean, look, anybody can have an opinion on who should be in the draft. I mean, I can go back, I can name names on people who wanted Johnny Manziel for the sizzle. Anyone can do that, but ultimately, if you're trying to be taken seriously, you can't. You're going to have to actually be able to understand the things they're talking about. And that becomes really difficult. Ultimately, what is Paul DePodesta's job? First, he works on streamlining processes and coming up with ways to make things more efficient. That is his piece. And to be clear, Paul DePodesta is not in charge of analytics for people who do not understand this. Ken Kovash is the guy who's in charge of analytics. They work for completely different departments. So Paul DePodesta works on trying to streamline processes, make things more efficient. And there are teams in the league who have copied off what the Browns are doing in this capacity.
Yeah.
Additionally, he is the guy who offers sort of obviously people remember the photo of what were the sort of
guardrails
for the team, which evolved, by the way. They are not the same year over year.
Yeah,
but
they've changed.
A lot of what Paul DePodesta does is try to sort of, and it's not even nag or anything like that. It's sort of like trying to make everybody focus on, hey, how does this solve our greater purpose of meeting these goals that we have, that we want to attack this? How does this impact what we are trying to achieve? How does this get us where we need to go, or does it? And in that sense, you can argue he's sort of the devil's advocate type element, which, by the way, would be valuable in that. Now you can sit there and go, well, maybe that's too much, and it could be. I don't know. But to then suggest that he does all these other things, it belies reality. He becomes a boogeyman. You make him into something that's going to be out and about on Halloween because but by virtue of not knowing exactly what it does, even though he's explained it, I think I've still got the freaking video saved somewhere. It allows people to let their imagination run away from them, and then suddenly they are conspiracy theory crazy on all this stuff, and it just doesn't make any sense. Like, do I think Paul DePodesta wants to win football games? Yeah. Do I think he's sitting there trying to like take over the head coach's responsibilities or the GM's responsibilities? I do not. I think he is far more interested in just trying to offer the best advice and analysis he can to sort of help them get to where they want to go.
Yeah. I think guardrails are a great example of like things in ways that he can impact. The one person that, listening to him talk about what he does in I think the one or two times that he's really gotten a chance to speak in front of the press, incredibly interesting and a brilliant guy to listen to. So
which is really a shame, because ever since he said the thing about Carson Wentz, which he was right about, even though it took a while for him to be right about, like he doesn't want to talk to anybody, and then rarely comes out and you get those Lasamba clips of what he's doing. But yeah, I mean, that is what's frustrating, is because you have this guy with this thing people don't understand, the thing that happens and has happened through all of human history. I don't know, but it must be scary. Takes over, and we land into this thing where it just makes no sense, and we talk ourselves into irrational and ultimately stupid endpoints. And yes, this is really good.
Chief Strategy Officer responsible for creating a company's vision, communicating the plan with all those involved, executing the business initiatives, and sustaining implementation efforts.
Now, just reading that sounds like a full-time job. That's a lot of work.
Thank you, Pat Shea.
So he does not have time to do the crap that he's being accused of. Again, he's in meetings. He's in these meetings that matter. But you know who else is currently in a lot of these meetings that matter? Mike Vrabel. Are we sitting there going, "Oh, Mike Vrabel, he's trying to steer this thing in a different direction"? No, because people like Mike Vrabel and they know who he is, even though he finished out his coaching career, his coaching tenure with the Tennessee Titans going like 6-18. So, and I like Mike Vrabel. I think he's a good coach, but like, this is the point where we sort of ignore the things we want to ignore and go, "Oh, well, he'd be so good." And the people who want him to be that coach seem to ignore the fact I think they finished something like 0-7 the one year. And then when like 5-11 or whatever it was, or 5-12 or whatever it was the following year, that ultimately
Vrabel nonsense is just going to get louder.
And which is fine. Ultimately, I don't care as long as the Browns ignore it. But like that stuff is idiotic to me. I want the best people in the organization as much as possible. I think Paul DePodesta's role is valuable in as much as I know about it. Certainly, I wish I knew more. He's welcome to call me and have me in, and I will join those meetings. I will put myself out there and tell you why you should draft guys and why I was right and all these other things, as I do on this show. Let me know.
Well said. Pete Smith knocking it down as always here on the React. We're going to get out of here as we cross over the 2-hour mark. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us for so long tonight and hashing all of this stuff out. It's tough stuff right now at 1-6, but often, as Pete has, so eloquently stated, the simplest answer is often the correct one, but common sense prevails in a lot of these situations. Now, we will continue to, and I will continue to, push back and ask questions as we want to do, and I think that's healthy to do always. But good videos tonight. Good stuff, Pete. And make sure you hit like and subscribe on your way out. As Pete always reminds you, the newsletter is in the link below. So you can go directly there and sign up for it, as well as the OBR website link in the description below. Any parting words for us tonight, Pete?
Yes. First, as Pat Shea can tell you, if you are subscribed to the OBR, you can ask questions to Ask the Insiders, and I've answered some of these at length. So if you're trying to get questions answered that I can give you sort of as best as I can, subscribe to the OBR and get in there and ask questions, and I'm happy to answer as many as I can. The other part I'll end this on a question, Brad Ward. Who do you think is currently the best offensive lineman on the Browns?
Wyatt Teller.
The guy who's injured?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you mean like right this second?
Yeah, right this second. Who is the best offensive lineman on the Browns?
Oh, boy. Well, Conklin left the game. DeJuan Jones.
It's Jack Conklin.
I know.
It's Jack Conklin. And this is where we end up in this world where we go, oh, man, everything's awful. And look, I hope Jedrick Wills does not go cascading into his leg again. But right this second, yes, it's been a long road. It sucks. But ultimately, right now, Jack Conklin looks like a solid right tackle, which is what we need him to be. So if you can get some of these other things working, Wyatt Teller coming back would be great. Joel Bitonio just being able to be Joel Bitonio, which has been really tough because he's flanked by two turds. If they can sort of get these things going, great. And then, like, we're talking about all the things the Browns have to fix in the offseason. Well, not that I'm saying you bet on him because I think you have to draft behind him, but Jack Conklin's a pretty good football player. And it would allow you to hopefully do more with DeJuan Jones, potentially flip him to the other side, or at least just continue to develop him as an offensive lineman so he can be better overall, which is what everybody wants. But I would just leave you on that for the people who are like, hey, what else is going on with this team that's good? Jack Conklin right now is good.
When he's healthy, Wyatt Teller's pretty good.
And I hope he comes back and he crushes it. Like, I think he will be. Yeah. I think those two will, especially, Nick Chubb. I think Nick Chubb will be very happy to see the right side of Jack Conklin and Wyatt Teller. Knock on wood. Hopefully it all happens because that has paved a lot of running lanes for him over the course of his career.
Last question while we're on this topic. Out of the offensive linemen on this roster right now, who do you see on the roster next year?
Jack Conklin, Wyatt Teller, and as depending on what he wants to do, Joe Bitonio. I don't think. I think they got to get another center.
Whippler.
If you're going that deep, everything with Whippler is going to depend on the recovery from his ankle. That's a very concerning injury. In terms of what all the things that could potentially go wrong with a broken ankle recovery. But I know the Browns liked him before he got hurt. So he would be on there. DeJuan Jones would be on there. At least for right now, Javion Cohen's going to be on that list. I'll be curious to see if they keep the kid Lorenzo from Rhode Island.
Thompson.
Zach Zinter will be here. So they've got
I would
more
play
guys.
Zinter over Dunn after his performance last week. If you're going to be that bad, just put Zinter in there.
Yeah, I mean, that was rough. Now, I think at that point, Michael Dunn becomes more of a backup center. But yeah, I agree with you. It was bad. I would hopefully just focus Dunn on being a center. And then if Postage continues to struggle, and some of that may be health, but Postage has had a really hard time this year, that maybe Dunn can give you a little bit more at center. I mean, on short notice, he was horrendous at center when he had to plug in there. But yes, Zinter, Conklin, Teller, Jones, potentially Bitonio, Javion Cohen, the kid rookie from Rhode Island. And then, here's the thing. Like, the fact that the Browns need a left tackle should not surprise anybody. And DeJuan Jones could be that thing. But even if he's not, they still would need, even if he is, they would still need more tackle help. They still need another guard, has been no secret. And then I would have argued anyway, regardless, that they would have need to get a center. You were hoping that Whippler would be that guy. Now it's a question mark, and now you're probably going to have to bring in another guy. So be it. But that's not nearly the amount of work people wanted to believe it is. I think you can easily get that done in an offseason in a way that you're going to feel good about your team heading into next year.
If you could get DeJuan Jones healthy enough and move him to the left side, you should do it. We've been saying this for a long time, but like,
I think
the health has been.
It's really tough. It's really tough to do it like now because you're sitting there going, man, if Jack Conklin gets stabilized, I'd love to just get DeJuan Jones nothing but work at left tackle and just focus on that entirely. But you can't because you now have to sit there and go, well, Jack might get hurt. So maybe there's a way he can start sort of mixing it in a little bit and trying to sort of work on it to sort of be a swing piece.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's really tough to do that during the year, which is why I was so hopeful they could do it in the offseason. But I do think if Conklin's able to get through the season healthy, which would obviously be important for the offseason, if DeJuan can get through healthy and all those things, then yes, I think you have to start working DeJuan Jones on the other side just to see what it looks like, just to give yourself as many options as possible, just to focus on getting your 5 best players on the field. And yes, I've argued endlessly that I think from a run, even though DeJuan Jones has been better this year as a run blocker, certainly better than last year, I still think ultimately the left side makes more sense for him, but we will see how that progresses.
Yeah. Got to get healthy to do it first, though.
Yep.
All right. Great job, Pete. Hit like, hit subscribe. We appreciate you guys as always. We'll get the podcast up right away for all of you guys that listen to podcasts. Leave us a review and 5 stars. Knock that down for us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, where all popular podcasts are found under the Orange and Brown podcast feed. Orange and Brown Report podcast feed. Pardon me. And with that, we're going to get out of here. Thank you guys for watching. And I'll see you tomorrow night for All Eyes on Cleveland. Read everything over at the OBR. For Pete Smith, my name is Brad Ward. We are out.